My name's Ethan. I'm 26 and I live in a cramped one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Salt Lake City. It's nothing special, just a place to crash after long nights on the job, with peeling paint on the walls and a fridge that hums louder than it cools. I work as a garbage collector for the city, handling the overnight shifts. Yeah, the kind of job where you drive a big, rumbling truck through empty streets, picking up what everyone else throws away. It's heavy, it's dirty, and most days it makes me feel like I'm invisible. People don't look at you when you're hauling trash bags at 3 a.m. They cross the street or pretend you're not there. I've been doing this for 4 years now, ever since I dropped out of community college because the tuition bills piled up faster than I could pay them. My mom used to say I had potential. She was a carpenter, building cabinets and shelves with her own hands until arthritis forced her to stop. She passed a couple of years back, leaving me with her old toolbox and a reminder to make something out of nothing. That's what I try to do, even in this line of work. The shifts start at midnight and drag on until dawn when the city starts waking up. I like the quiet of it, the way the world feels empty except for the hum of the truck's engine and the occasional streetlight flickering overhead. To pass the time, I started adding little touches to the recycling bins I service, drawing simple sketches with a permanent marker like a flying bird or a quick quote like, "Give trash a second chance." It's stupid, I know, but it makes the job feel less like drudgery. No one's ever noticed, or at least, no one's ever said anything. Until that one freezing morning in early winter. It was around 5 a.m., the kind of cold that seeps into your bones even through layers of gloves and a heavy jacket. Snow flurries were dancing in the air, light and lazy, sticking to the ground just enough to make everything slick. I was in the upscale commercial district downtown, the part of town with glass skyscrapers and fancy coffee shops that charge $8 for a latte. My route takes me there every Wednesday, emptying bins behind office buildings where executives probably make more in a day than I do in a week. I was heaving a full dumpster onto the truck's lift when I heard footsteps crunching on the fresh snow. I didn't think much of it. Sometimes early risers jog by or grab their cars from overnight parking. But then the steps stopped right behind me. I turned around, wiping sweat from my forehead despite the chill, and there she was. A woman stepping out from the lobby of one of the tallest buildings, her breath fogging in the air. She had hair that was a mix of silver and gold, tied back in a neat ponytail, and she was wrapped in a rich brown cashmere coat that looked like it cost more than my monthly rent. Her eyes were deep-set, tired, but sharp, like someone who'd been up all night wrestling with thoughts. She didn't flinch at the smell of the garbage or the rumble of the truck. Instead, she walked straight toward me, her boots leaving clean prints in the snow. "You're the one who's been drawing those cute symbols on the recycling bins, aren't you?" she said, her voice steady and warm, cutting through the cold like a hot knife. I froze, my hand still gripping the edge of the dumpster. No one had ever mentioned my doodles before. Hell, no one had ever talked to me on the job unless it was to complain about a missed pickup. I nodded dumbly, feeling my face heat up under the beanie. Yeah, that's me. Just something to kill time." She smiled. A real one. Not the polite kind people give strangers. It lit up her face, making her look younger than the lines around her eyes suggested. "I've noticed them. Every week there's a little bird or a short saying. 'Recycle for a brighter tomorrow' was my favorite last month. Thank you, it's the reason I make sure to sort my trash properly now." I didn't know what to say. Here was this woman, clearly someone important. Her coat, her posture, the way she carried herself screamed executive. And she was thanking me for scribbles on a bin? I mumbled something like, "No problem, glad it helps." But inside, my heart was pounding. It wasn't just the surprise, it was the way she looked at me. Not like I was the garbage guy, but like I was a person worth noticing. She introduced herself as Sophia Hart, and I caught a glimpse of her badge clipped to her bag. CEO of Hart Development, one of the biggest real estate firms in the state. I'd seen their billboards everywhere, advertising luxury condos and eco-friendly office spaces. We chatted for a minute or two about the weather, how the snow made everything quieter. But then she paused, her expression shifting to something more vulnerable. "You know, I get up this early because I can't sleep. Too many decisions weighing on me, running a company like mine. It's lonely at the top. Your drawings? They remind me that there's still some whimsy in the world, even in the trash." That hit me like a ton of bricks. Lonely? Her? This powerful woman who probably had everything? I felt a rush of empathy mixed with something else, a pull I couldn't name. I get that, I said, surprising myself. This job's lonely too. No one sees you until something's wrong. But hey, if my birds make your mornings better, I'll keep drawing them. She laughed softly, a sound that warmed the air around us. Deal. See you next Wednesday? And just like that, she was gone, heading back into her building. I stood there for a full minute after the truck's engine roared back to life, replaying the conversation. My hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from the shock of being seen. Truly seen for the first time in years. I didn't know it then, but that moment was the start of everything. A garbage collector and a CEO? It sounded ridiculous. But as I drove away, the city lights blurring in the snow, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just been pulled out of the shadows. The rest of the shift dragged on, but my mind kept wandering back to her. Sophia. Why had she stopped? Why talk to me? By the time I clocked out and collapsed into bed, the sun was rising, and I was already counting down to next Wednesday. Little did I know she would show up again, with coffee in hand, and our worlds would start to collide in ways neither of us expected. After that first encounter, the days blurred into a routine that felt strangely charged. I went through my shifts like always, hauling bags, emptying bins, dodging the occasional rat scurrying in the alleys. But my mind kept drifting back to Sophia. Her smile, her words, the way she'd seen something in my silly drawings that no one else had. I told myself it was nothing, just a fluke conversation with a stranger who'd probably forget about me by the next board meeting. But deep down, I hoped she'd meant it when she said, "See you next Wednesday." I even caught myself sketching an extra bird on a bin that morning, just in case. Wednesday rolled around and I was back in the same spot downtown, the snow now a slushy mess underfoot from the day's traffic. The cold had eased a bit, but the air still bit at my exposed skin as I wrestled with a particularly stubborn dumpster behind her building. I kept glancing at the lobby doors, trying not to look obvious, but my heart jumped every time someone stepped out. Then, right on cue at 6 a.m., there she was. Sophia, bundled in that same cashmere coat, ponytail slightly windswept, carrying two steaming cups from the fancy cafe across the street. She spotted me and waved, her smile cutting through the gray dawn like a beam of light. "Morning, Ethan," she said, handing me one of the cups. "Black coffee, no sugar. Figured you might need something to warm up after all that lifting." I took it, the heat seeping through my gloves like a lifeline. "Thanks, you didn't have to do that." But I was grinning like an idiot, the kind of smile I hadn't worn in months. We ended up sitting on a nearby bench, the one next to the recycling bins I'd marked up, sipping our drinks while the city slowly woke up around us. At first, it was small talk. How the snow was melting too fast, making the streets a mess. How the early hours felt peaceful before the rush hour chaos. But then she asked about me. Really asked, like she cared. "So, what got you into this line of work?" she said, tilting her head curiously. I shrugged, staring into my cup. Needed something steady after my mom passed. She was a carpenter, built furniture, fixed up houses, taught me to work with my hands. College didn't stick, too expensive, and I wasn't great at sitting in classrooms anyway. This job pays the bills, and I get to be outside, sort of. What about you? Running a big company like that must be intense. She nodded, her eyes distant for a moment. It is. I studied interior design in college, actually. Dreamed of creating spaces that felt like home. But life pulled me into business, family expectations, a marriage that pushed me toward stability. Now I'm CEO, building empires instead of cozy rooms. Some days I wonder if I lost myself along the way. Her honesty caught me off guard. Here was this powerful woman opening up to a guy like me over cheap coffee on a park bench. I shared more about my mom, how she'd hammer nails with precision, turning scraps into shelves or tables. She always said, "Make something out of nothing." That's why I draw on the bins. Feels like turning trash into, I don't know, a reminder that everything deserves a second look. Sophia leaned back, her coat brushing against the bench. "That's beautiful. You're not just a garbage collector, Ethan. You're the guy who keeps this city running so people like me can pretend everything's spotless. It's the most honorable job, picking up after everyone else's mess. I laughed, a real one that shook off some of the exhaustion from the night. You're the first person to say that. Most folks act like I'm invisible. But with her, I didn't feel that way. We talked until my break ended, and as she headed back to her office, she promised, same time next week? And she kept her word. The following Wednesday, there she was again, with coffee and a bagel this time. Our conversations deepened bit by bit. I learned about her world, the endless meetings, the pressure from shareholders, how she'd built Heart Development from a small firm into a powerhouse, focusing on sustainable buildings. It's rewarding, she admitted one morning, but exhausting. No time for anything else. My marriage ended years ago because of it. No kids, no family left, just the job. I opened up too about feeling stuck in my routine, dreaming of something more but not knowing how to reach it. Sometimes I think about going back to school, for environmental science maybe, help with better recycling systems. But who has the time or money? She listened intently, her eyes never wandering to her phone like most people would. You should. You've got the passion for it. I see it in those drawings. Her encouragement felt genuine, not pitying. Week after week, those early mornings became my anchor. The cold didn't bother me as much, the job felt less lonely. I'd rush through my route just to make sure I was on time for our spot. And each time, she'd say something that stuck with me, like, "You're the reason I look forward to Wednesdays now." One particularly frosty morning, as we shared a thermos of her homemade brew, stronger than the cafe stuff, she looked at me seriously. "Ethan, your work matters more than you know. In my boardrooms, we talk about sustainability, but you're the one living it every day." I felt a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the coffee. And you're the first person to make me believe that. Our eyes met longer than usual, and for a second, the age difference, the worlds apart, didn't matter. It was just two people connecting in the quiet dawn. But as the weeks turned into a month, I started noticing whispers, from my coworkers teasing about my mystery mornings, and I wondered if anyone on her side was catching on. Little did I know, the rumors were already brewing, ready to force us into a confrontation neither of us saw coming. As the weeks turned into a solid month of our Wednesday mornings, something shifted inside me. What started as a random encounter had become this quiet ritual I looked forward to more than anything. Sophia's presence was like a break in the clouds after a long night shift. Warm, unexpected, and somehow essential. We'd sit on that bench, steam rising from our cups, talking about everything from my mom's old woodworking tricks to her latest boardroom battles. She opened up about the isolation of being at the top, how the constant decisions left her second-guessing herself at night. I shared my frustrations with the job, how it paid the bills but chipped away at my sense of purpose. "You're more than this," she'd say, her voice steady. "Those drawings, they're art. Proof you've got something special." Her words stuck with me, making the rest of my shifts feel a little less grinding. But the world has a way of intruding on good things. It started small, a joke from my coworker Mike during a lunch break at the depot. We were scarfing down sandwiches in the break room, grease-stained and exhausted, when he nudged me. "Hey, Ethan, what's with the extra pep on Wednesdays? Got a hot date downtown or something?" I laughed it off, but he pressed. "Nah, seriously, saw you chatting with some fancy lady near the office bins last week. She looked way out of your league, man. CEO type? You aiming high or what?" My stomach dropped. How had he seen us? I mumbled something about her just asking about recycling routes, but the teasing didn't stop. By the end of the week, the whole crew was in on it. "Ethan's got a sugar mama. Watch out, she'll have you polishing her limo next." It was all in good fun to them, but it gnawed at me. What if word got back to her? What if someone from her world spotted us? On her side, I could tell things were brewing too. One morning, Sophia seemed distracted, her usual smile a bit forced. "Rough week?" I asked, handing her half my bagel. She sighed, staring at the steam from her cup. "The office grapevine is buzzing. One of my assistants mentioned seeing me talking to the garbage guy every week. They're whispering, saying I'm having some midlife crisis, getting too friendly with the help." She rolled her eyes, but I saw the hurt flicker there. It's stupid, but it stings. In my position, everything's scrutinized. I felt a knot tighten in my chest. Yeah, my guys are giving me crap too, calling it a joke, but maybe we should cool it for a bit. I don't want to cause you trouble." The words tasted bitter as I said them. She nodded slowly, her eyes meeting mine with a mix of regret and understanding. "You're right. Last thing I need is more boardroom drama." We finished our coffee in awkward silence, and when she left, it felt like something had cracked. I skipped the next Wednesday on purpose, rerouting my truck to hit the district later. The bench sat empty under the streetlights, and the cold felt sharper without her there. Days blurred. Work, sleep, repeat, but the absence gnawed at me. I missed her laugh, her stories, the way she made me feel seen. Was this just a fleeting connection or something more? The self-doubt crept in. Who was I kidding? A 26-year-old trash hauler and a 44-year-old CEO? Our worlds were miles apart. Her with her high-rises and power suits, me with my calloused hands and empty apartment. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't care about the labels. She wasn't just the CEO to me anymore. She was Sophia, the woman who saw value in my doodles and shared her vulnerabilities over coffee. After a week of radio silence, I couldn't take it anymore. That night, after my shift, I grabbed an old recycling bin from the depot, one I'd cleaned up, and spent hours painting it by hand in my apartment. A simple scene, a bird perched on a coffee cup with the words, "Mornings are better shared," etched below. It was cheesy, but it felt right. The next morning before dawn, I drove to her office building. The lobby was quiet, just the night guard dozing at the desk. I approached the reception counter, heart pounding like I was committing a crime. Could you give this to Sophia Hart? Tell her it's from the guy with the birds." The receptionist raised an eyebrow but took it without questions. I left before I could second-guess myself, the truck's engine drowning out my racing thoughts. The following Wednesday, I forced myself back to the route, half expecting the bench to be empty again. But as I pulled up, there she was. Sitting there in the dim light, 2 coffees in hand, her coat wrapped tight against the wind. Relief washed over me like a wave. I parked the truck and walked over, my boots crunching on the gravel. "Sophia," I said, stopping a few feet away. "I wasn't sure you'd come." She looked up, her eyes soft but intense. "I got your gift." "The bin. It's beautiful. Why'd you avoid me?" Her voice was quiet, but there was an edge of hurt. I sat down, taking the coffee she offered. "The rumors, my crew, your office. I didn't want to drag you into anything messy. We're from different worlds, you know? You with your empire, me with this." I gestured at the truck. She set her cup down, turning to face me fully. "Ethan, do you know, you're the reason I've started seeing this city differently. Not as a bunch of buildings I develop, but as a place full of real people, like you, keeping it alive. The rumors? Let them talk. What's important is this, us right here." Her hand brushed mine, tentative at first, then holding on. In that moment, under the flickering streetlight, our worlds collided for real. I felt the barriers crumble. The age gap, the jobs, the judgments. "I'm scared too," I admitted, "but I don't want to stop." She squeezed my hand. "Then don't." We sat there as the sun crept up, the city stirring around us, and for the first time it felt like we were choosing each other despite everything. But I knew the whispers wouldn't stop, and soon, they'd force us to make decisions no one else would understand. After that dawn confession on the bench, where we chose each other despite the whispers, things moved faster than I expected. Sophia and I started meeting more often. Not just Wednesdays, but stolen lunches in quiet parks or late-night texts that turned into phone calls lasting hours. We'd talk about everything. Her frustrations with the cutthroat world of real estate development, how the constant pressure to expand and profit left her feeling hollow, my dreams of doing more than just collecting trash, maybe turning my interest in recycling into something bigger, like community programs for waste management. She encouraged me in ways no one ever had, sending links to online courses or articles about environmental grants. "You have the heart for it, Ethan," she'd say. "Don't let the job define you." But the rumors didn't fade. They amplified. At work, my supervisor pulled me aside one day after a shift. "Heard you're cozying up to some big shot downtown. Careful, kid. Folks like that don't mix with us for long." It stung, but I brushed it off. On her end, it was worse. During one of our park meetups, she arrived looking drained, her usual poise cracked. The board called an emergency meeting yesterday, she said, picking at a sandwich wrapper. One of the VPs expressed concerns about my distractions. They think I'm losing focus because of, well, this. She gestured between us. I felt guilty, like I'd dragged her down. Maybe we should? No. She cut in firmly, her hand finding mine under the table. This isn't a distraction. It's the first real thing I've felt in years. That night, she opened up more about her past, the failed marriage to a fellow executive who'd left her for someone less complicated, the childless years that followed because work always came first. I built an empire, but what for? To sit alone in a penthouse with awards on the wall? Her vulnerability hit me hard. I shared my own scars, losing my mom young, scraping by without a safety net, feeling like I'd never amount to more than this uniform. You're the one who makes me believe I can, I told her. Then came the bombshell. A few weeks later, during a rainy afternoon call, she'd skipped a meeting to talk to me. Sophia dropped the news. I did it. I resigned. My jaw hit the floor. What? You're the CEO. Heart development is you. She laughed, a mix of nerves and relief. Was me. I handed over the reins to my successor at the board meeting this morning. Told them I'm stepping back to focus on sustainable projects for low-income communities, real impact, not just profits. The press release hit the wires that day. Sophia Hart steps down amid shift to philanthropy. Headlines speculated burnout, a midlife crisis, even hidden scandals. Her phone blew up with calls from confused colleagues and judgmental friends. They think I've lost my mind, she confided over coffee the next morning, her eyes brighter despite the chaos. I was stunned, proud, and terrified all at once. Why now, for real? She looked at me steadily. Because of you, Ethan. Talking to you, seeing how you find meaning in the small things. It made me realize I've been throwing away my own life. I want to build something that matters, not empires that crumble. She wasn't kidding. Within days, she dove into planning, scouting sites for affordable housing with green features, partnering with local nonprofits. And she pulled me in, not as charity, but as an equal. You know waste management better than anyone. Help me design the recycling systems for these projects. She guided me through applying for scholarships, even sat with me to fill out forms late at night in her now former office, surrounded by boxes of her old life. My turn came soon after. With her encouragement and a grant she helped me secure, I enrolled in evening classes for an environmental science certificate at the local community college. It was tough, juggling night shifts with homework, dozing through lectures after hauling trash all evening. But Sophia was there, not handing me money, but showing up with study snacks or quizzing me on terms like biodegradable polymers. One exhausted night, as she helped tidy my cluttered apartment after a cram session, wiping counters while I reviewed notes, I finally asked the question burning in me. Sophia, why are you doing all this? For me? She stopped, turning to face me, her expression soft and serious. Because when you pick up what others discard, you reminded me that I could be picked up too. After my divorce, I felt like trash, used up, forgotten. But you saw me, really saw me, on that cold morning. And I see you too, Ethan. You're not just surviving. You're capable of so much more. The air between us thickened. I set down my notebook, stepping closer. I love you, I said, the words tumbling out raw and true. Not for what you were, but for who you are with me. She didn't pull away. Instead, she cupped my face, her touch gentle. I love you too, for seeing the woman behind the title. We kissed then, slow and certain, the world outside fading. It wasn't about passion overriding sense, it was two people choosing each other amid the mess. But not everyone understood. My coworkers ribbed me harder. Ditching us for school? That rich lady got you brainwashed? Her circle was harsher. Old friends distancing themselves, whispering about her downgrade. We ignored it, focusing on our path. Her new projects blooming, my classes opening doors. Those decisions, radical and misunderstood, bound us tighter, proving love could rebuild from the scraps. 1 year later, and everything had changed in ways I never could have predicted. That cold morning when Sophia first noticed my drawings felt like a lifetime ago, but it was the spark that led us here. On Roosevelt Avenue, in a repurposed warehouse on the edge of downtown Salt Lake City, stood the new community recycling center I'd founded. It wasn't some grand facility, just a modest space with sorting stations, educational displays, and a cozy corner with bookshelves for kids to read while their parents dropped off recyclables. We'd called it Second Chance Hub, a nod to the idea that nothing and no one should be discarded without a fair shot. I ran the place now, full-time, after quitting the overnight trash routes. The certificate in environmental science had opened doors. Grants from local foundations, partnerships with schools for eco-workshops. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt right, turning waste into resources just like Sophia had turned my life around. She was right there with me, not as the former CEO pulling strings from afar, but as my partner in every sense. Sophia had traded her penthouse for a smaller condo nearby, pouring her energy into consulting on sustainable housing projects. No more boardrooms or power suits. These days she wore jeans and hoodies, her silver gold hair often tied back as she helped sort bins or led tours for school groups. We didn't live together, not yet anyway. It wasn't about rushing into labels or a big wedding. We'd both been through enough to know that love didn't need ceremonies to be real. Instead, our days blended naturally. Mornings at the center, afternoons brainstorming ideas over lunch, evenings walking along the Jordan River Parkway, talking about the future without the weight of expectations. One crisp fall morning, as the leaves turned gold under the Utah sun, I arrived early to set up. The center was quiet, the air smelling of fresh cardboard and coffee brewing in the back. I prepped a small surprise for her, a homemade oatmeal cookie wrapped in a cloth napkin tucked beside her favorite mug. On the napkin, I'd scribbled in marker, "Not everything discarded is trash. Some things are just waiting to be cherished again." It had become our little tradition, echoing those early bin drawings. She showed up right on time, her cheeks flushed from the walk, carrying a thermos of herbal tea. "Morning, Ethan," she said, spotting the cookie and smiling that way she did. Soft, genuine, like the world made sense again. We sat in the reading nook, the sun filtering through the windows we'd installed together last spring. Kids' books lined the shelves, colorful posters on the walls explaining composting and upcycling. "Hard to believe it's been a year," I said, watching her unwrap the treat. "From trash trucks to this." She nodded, breaking off a piece and handing it to me. "A good year. The best one I've had in, well, forever." Her eyes met mine, and I saw the peace there, the kind that comes from shedding old skins. After resigning, she'd faced backlash, old colleagues calling her impulsive, family questioning her sanity. "Throwing away your legacy for what? A recycling gig?" one aunt had sneered. But Sophia stood firm, channeling her expertise into affordable green homes for families like the ones I'd grown up around. She'd even mentored me through the center's launch, helping with permits and funding pitches, but always insisting I lead. "This is your vision," she'd say. "I'm just here to help build it." As we sipped our drinks, a group of school kids arrived for a tour, laughing, wide-eyed, sorting plastic bottles into bins like it was a game. Sophia jumped in seamlessly, explaining how recycling saves energy, her voice animated and free. Watching her, I felt a swell of gratitude. "You know," I said later once the group left, "I used to think my life was just scraps, nothing worth saving. But you saw something more." She placed her hand on my shoulder, her touch familiar and steady. "We both did. I was the one tossed aside after my divorce. Successful on paper, but empty inside. But you picked me up, Ethan. Showed me that life's not about empires. It's about the small acts that make a difference." Her words hung in the air, simple and profound. We didn't need grand gestures. Our love was in the everyday, the shared coffees, the late-night planning sessions, the quiet support when doubts crept in. That afternoon, as we closed up the center, a young volunteer asked how we met. I glanced at Sophia and we shared a knowing smile. "Over coffee and trash bins," I said vaguely. No need for details, our story was ours. We walked home together, her arm linked in mine, the autumn breeze carrying hints of winter. No rings, no vows, just a life rebuilt from what others might discard. And in that, we found everything we needed.